Baldoni lawsuit dismissed. Lively exploits. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Justin Baldoni's counter lawsuit against Blake Lively has been dismissed. Blake Lively then exploits that situation as you would expect a narcissist to do so. There are two distinct elements to this latest chapter of the saga between the two actors, which I'm going to break down for you. First of all, Blake Lively brought a lawsuit essentially alleging sexual harassment against Justin Baldoni. As you know, because she is a narcissist, and I placed her under the Tudor scope and examined her behaviours extensively, that action was taken to assert control over Justin Baldoni, to nullify threats to control in relation to allegations of poor behaviour by Blake Lively. It was to seek the residual benefit of money and to manage her facade as a hard-done-to individual who is just a kind person that stands up for women. Accordingly, she launched a lawsuit, and Baldoni countered. Unfortunately for him, most aspects of his counter lawsuit have been dismissed. Let's look at that part first. A New York judge, as reported by the BBC, has dismissed Justin Baldoni's $400 million defamation lawsuit against his former co-star, Blake Lively. Judge Lewis Lehman, on Monday, dismissed Baldoni's counter-suit, which alleged extortion, defamation, and other allegations. Baldoni brought the suit after Lively filed a legal complaint last year against her former co-star, accusing him of sexual harassment and starting a smear campaign against her. Accordingly, the actions of Baldoni she perceived as a threat to control. Therefore, driven by her narcissism, she brought a claim against him to nullify those threats to control. That didn't succeed, because it caused Baldoni to not only defend himself, but then file a suit against her husband, their publicist, and also the New York Times. He brought defamation suits against Lively, her husband, and their publicist, claiming they were aiming to ruin his career and reputation with the allegations, and also for defamation against the New York Times. Baldoni's lawsuit centred on two claims: that Lively stole the film from him and his company Wayfarer by threatening not to promote it, and that she and others promoted a false narrative that Baldoni sexually assaulted her and launched a smear campaign against her. Now, the judge stated that Baldoni and his production company have not adequately alleged that Lively's threats were wrongful extortion rather than legally permissible hard bargaining or renegotiation of working conditions. So in other words, it isn't the case that the judge is saying that he doesn't believe what Baldoni is saying. It's simply the case that the judge does not think the case as pleaded, because remember, the judge hasn't heard the evidence, there hasn't been a trial. It's simply looking at the pleadings, the judge believes that he hasn't reached the threshold to even start to show that it was wrongful extortion, and simply it looked more like legally permissible hard bargaining or renegotiation of working conditions, and therefore the extortion claim is struck out. Furthermore, the judge wrote that Baldoni and his company have not proved defamation because the Wayfarer parties have not alleged that Lively is responsible for any statements other than the statements in her lawsuit, which are privileged because they appear in a lawsuit. And he's failed against the New York Times because the evidence didn't show that they acted with actual malice in publishing their story. The alleged facts indicate that the Times reviewed the available evidence and reported, perhaps in a dramatised manner, what it believed to have happened. The Times had no obvious motive to favour Lively's version of events. Accordingly, it's important to point out that the judge isn't saying that Baldoni is lying or Baldoni is wrong in his allegations. It's quite simply the case that his allegations haven't met a suitable legal threshold and therefore can't be sustained. In essence, they've been dismissed for technical reasons, which, according to the law, is entirely permissible. Naturally, this is a blow for Baldoni, but it's not a complete loss, because he has until the 23rd of June to amend his pleading and refile his allegations related to interference with contracts, and therefore there is still part of the countersuit available against Blake Lively. And furthermore, of course, it isn't the case that her allegations have been proven against him, and he may well still have his day in court to demonstrate that her allegations of sexual harassment and a smear campaign are wrong. Therefore, it's not total victory for Blake Lively, but it is a blow, naturally, to Justin Baldoni at this juncture to have large sections of his countersuit removed. Naturally, this means that significant aspects of a threat to control to Blake Lively have been removed, and also to Ryan Reynolds. The presence of a lawsuit against a pair of narcissists is naturally a threat to control, and in the circumstances, with the judge removing that, they've managed to nullify those aspects of the threat to control. It's not completely over, but understandably, a narcissist will be pleased with this outcome. Lively will naturally see it as a vindication of her stance and her position. Subconsciously, it's affording her control over Baldoni, because remember, as a narcissist, she's pursuing the prime aims. And in typical narcissist fashion, she now then exploits this success. Were she a non-narcissist, you might expect that there would be some kind of announcement following this success. But remember, because she is a narcissist, the announcement she makes is driven by her need to pursue the prime aims, because everything that a narcissist does in relation to other people is driven by the prime aims and nothing else. And accordingly, rather than stay silent and privately enjoy the fact that parts of the countersuit have been dismissed, naturally, this one's wife, I beg your pardon, have been struck out. In typical narcissist fashion, Blake Lively takes to the media. As reported by Adam Levy for the Daily Mail, Blake Lively has spoken out for the first time since she was cleared in the $400 million defamation and extortion lawsuit filed by Justin Baldoni. The actress released a powerful statement hours after a judge dismissed Baldoni's case. Last week, I stood proudly alongside 19 organizations united in defending women's rights to speak up for their safety, Lively wrote on Instagram. Here we have the narcissist managing her facade. Look at me. I stood alongside 19 organizations defending women's rights to speak up for their safety. I'm utilizing social media for the purposes of assertion of control over the audience and in order to draw fuel by way of people's responses. She wrote, like so many others, I've felt the pain of a retaliatory lawsuit, pity play, including the manufactured shame that tries to break us, smearing. While the suit against me was defeated, so many don't have the resources to fight back, cognitive empathy. Lively was pictured at the 18th annual Tribeca Artists Dinner in New York City on Monday evening, coming off her stellar day. She vowed that she was more resolved than ever to continue to stand for every woman's right to have a voice in protecting themselves, including their safety, their integrity, their dignity, and their story. Accordingly, character trait acquisition by aligning herself with actual genuine victims. How often have we witnessed narcissists female narcissists in particular, claiming that they are on the receiving end of unpleasant behavior and that they're exercising the woman's right to have a voice in protecting themselves. Think of Amber Heard, who was roundly shown as a consequence of the examination of the evidence to be an abuser. Think about This One's Wife, whereby she regularly claims that she is horrendously bullied when evidence demonstrates that she is the bully. And, once again, we have Blake Lively, another narcissist who has behaved in a reprehensible fashion. The documentation demonstrates. Understand, and it's worthwhile me pointing this out, Baldoni's claim hasn't failed because he's not been believed. Baldoni's claim hasn't failed because he's lying. Baldoni's claim has failed as a consequence of a legal technicality, whereby the judge deems that as pleaded, it doesn't show extortion, and that in relation to the statements of defamation, he hadn't been able to demonstrate that they had been said by Lively outside of the pleadings. This doesn't prove that he has sexually harassed her. We've yet to have that trial. It doesn't prove that he has smeared her. We're yet to have that trial. But naturally, a narcissist such as Blake Lively jumps all over this result to demonstrate, I've been vindicated. Not only that, look what happened. I stand up for women's rights and I get a retaliatory lawsuit to try and silence me. Remember, in her world as a narcissist, she believes that she is the victim. Her narcissism doesn't allow her to see that she was the aggressor, the perpetrator, in cahoots with her husband. Instead, it tells her that she was simply standing up for herself in the light of despicable behaviour from Baldoni and his cronies, and this has now been vindicated. Well, it hasn't, because we've yet to have the trial, and it may well be the case that once the evidence is examined, there is no finding of sexual harassment. She wrapped up in thanking those in the public who have supported her amid the turbulent past year, with love and gratitude for the many who stood by me. Many of you I know, many of you I don't, but I will never stop appreciating or advocating for you. She then listed a number of groups that have publicly supported her, which included the California Employment Lawyers Association, California Women's Law Center, Child USA, Coalition Against Trafficking in Women, Equal Rights Advocates, Esperanza United, Her Justice, and Her University, Inc. Accordingly, she also took aim at Baldoni, saying that women's groups had abandoned him in droves. She explained that a total of 19 leading survivors and organisations devoted to women's rights, children's rights and domestic violence have now signed on to 4 separate amicus briefs, which a spokesman for her actress explained in a statement. The statement also stated, all are united in opposing Justin Baldoni's attempt to dismantle a law designed to protect women who speak up, simply to protect himself. Lively's team said that Baldoni was going against his own playbook as the complicated legal case progresses, leaving himself open to increased scrutiny in the wake of his past public statements. Rather than defend his case on the facts, Baldoni is now contradicting years of his own public persona, abandoning the message of his #MeToo YouTubes, podcasts, TED Talks and interviews, where he once upon a time urged men to listen to the women in your life, to hold their anguish and actually believe them, even if what they are saying is against you, Lively's rep said. The statement wrapped up, these women and organisations are sounding the alarm about his DARVO, D-A-R-V-O, tactics and the chilling effect they could have well beyond this case. This is typical behaviour of a narcissist. Her application to strike out part of Baldoni's claim has succeeded because of legal argument, not factual analysis. It is common for the narcissist to paint the real victim as the perpetrator. This is one of the most common aspects of the narcissist's playbook. For instance, It may well be the case that having engaged with a victim and subjected them to corrective devaluations or sustained devaluation, that victim then wakes up to what they've experienced, either recognizing it as abuse or even recognizing that they are an individual that has been in the grasp of a narcissist. They then start to seek to expose the narcissist. It may well be that they contact the narcissist, demanding to know, why have you done this? Here are your lies. I know that you've abused me. Answer me. Be accountable for your behaviors. The victim often will tell other people about what has happened, going around explaining in considerable detail the ins and outs of the relationships and what has happened. They will often take to social media, explaining across social media how they have been treated, possibly even going so far as to create a YouTube channel or a blog detailing everything that has gone on. And what will the narcissist do in response to all of this exposure? Turn around and say, that person is the crazy person. Look, they're defaming me. They're harassing me. The narcissist often goes to the police or threatens to go to the police, saying, I'm being harassed by this person, sending me lots of emails, talking about how badly I've behaved. I haven't. They came on to me. I simply responded to them. They started flirting with me, and I simply responded to them. It's got out of hand. Yes, we had some kind of relationship, but I ended it, and now this is their reaction to it. They can't cope with the fact that I've ended the relationship, so they've taken to going around and smearing me and threatening me and exposing a private relationship. They're engaging in harassment. The narcissist might even go so far as to seek a restraining order or institute criminal proceedings against the genuine victim. It can also often be the case that, unfortunately for the victim, that their behaviour, when they're simply seeking to expose the conduct of the narcissist, does fall to equate to harassment. And they can suddenly find themselves, extraordinary, being on the receiving end of litigation and restraining orders, which naturally offends their sense of injustice all the more. What then happens? The victim cries out all the more, and the narcissist simply says, look at what a nutter they are. They're doubling down on their denials. Uninformed third parties may well look at this whole situation and conclude that the victim is the problem, rather than it being the other way around. It is a classic response of the narcissist to remain relatively calm and point out that the true victim is the problem. I've seen it happen time and time again in relation to those that I have advised, and you can see it here. Baldoni is the victim of Lively's behaviour. I repeat again, his lawsuit has not been defeated because it's untrue or because he has lied. It has failed as a consequence of technical legal argument. Naturally, this means that a potential threat to control has been removed, which causes a deep satisfaction for Blake Lively, and then she doubles down on it to not only smear Baldoni further through her legal team by calling him a hypocrite, but then also bolstering her own facade management by saying, I'm right and I've been defending women's rights and all these organisations stand with me. I am the victim, but I will not be ground down by this perpetrator. Those who understand narcissism and understand this dynamic will recognise what I'm talking about. There will be many people who will continue to support Lively, unaware of what she actually is. Remember, what she is has been demonstrated by much of her behaviour over a sustained period of time, and her conduct in relation to the film, It Ends With Us, and the litigation thereafter, just simply underlines her narcissism. But it provides me with an excellent example to demonstrate how the removal of the lawsuit nullifies a threat to control, which naturally is something that would delight the narcissist, and thereafter, rather than remain quiet and revel in this victory, she then utilises it, exploits it, to go further onto the attack against Baldoni and also to bolster her own reputation. Something that has been played out many, many times in other instances involving people less prominent and less famous. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.